Welcome to the BioPharma Business Intelligence Unit, where symbolic integrity meets strategic clarity. At BBIU, we go beyond the headlines to decode the structural forces behind global biopharma, AI, and economic realignment. If you value precision, verification, and symbolic depth, this channel is for you. Subscribe now to access our weekly briefings, dossiers, and intelligence reports, and consider joining our institutional tier to unlock early warning systems, custom metrics, and exclusive strategic insight. You're not just listening, you're entering the future of epistemic intelligence. www.BioPharma Business Intelligence Unit.com.
Israeli strike on Doha, from counterterrorism to strategic self-immolation. SEP 30th Executive Summary. On September 9, 2025, Israel launched an unprecedented airstrike on Doha, Qatar, targeting senior Hamas figures. Unlike past extraterritorial operations in Amman, Dubai, or Tehran, this strike hit the capital of a U.S. major non-NATO ally, home to Al-Udeid Air Base and more than $1.2 trillion in U.S. Qatari agreements. 6 people were killed, including a Qatari security official. Hamas leaders reportedly survived. The consequences were immediate: the collapse of ceasefire negotiations, unified regional condemnation, and a rupture in the architecture of U.S. Gulf security. Israel's strike in Doha is not a tactical success, but a strategic miscalculation with cascading diplomatic, economic, and symbolic costs. BBIU opinion: the Doha strike. On September 9, 2025, Israeli warplanes struck Doha, the capital of Qatar, in what will be remembered as a watershed in Middle Eastern geopolitics. For decades, Israel has pursued its adversaries abroad, from Amman to Dubai to Tehran, but never before had it bombed the capital of a U.S. major non-NATO ally, home to Al-Udeid Air Base with 10,000 U.S. troops, and the anchor of $1.2 trillion in defense and commercial deals with Washington. 6 people were killed, including a Qatari security official. Hamas's leadership reportedly survived. Yet the real detonation was political. Washington's credibility as guarantor of Gulf security collapsed in full daylight. The military dimension: silence in the skies. What alarms regional observers is not only that Israel attacked Doha, but how. A bomb dropped from an Israeli aircraft. To reach Qatar, the platform likely traversed Saudi or Emirati airspace, or corridors monitored by U.S. sensors. Al-Udeid hosts radars, AWACS, Patriot, and THAAD, all able to detect incursions. Yet no warning, no interception, no deterrent maneuver was reported. 2 explanations remain: tacit approval. In a U.S. or Saudi chain of command, someone chose not to act. Strategic blindness, a choice to look away for political calculation or pressure. Either option shreds American credibility: complicity with Israel against a U.S. ally, or inability to defend the very skies that host America's forward presence. Netanyahu's calculus: domestic trap, external explosion. Why take such a risk? Domestic siege: Netanyahu faces corruption trials, mass protests in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and mounting pressure from hostage families. The political incentive is to shift the narrative from weakness to force. Sabotaging diplomacy: Hamas envoys were in Doha for U.S.-backed ceasefire talks, striking mid-negotiation torpedoes that process, ensuring no ceasefire constrains his government. Projection of power: bombing Doha signals Israel can operate in the heart of the Gulf, under the shadow of U.S. bases. Stress test: it forces Arab capitals to condemn publicly, betting they remain dependent privately. In short, the strike was aimed less at Hamas in Doha than at Israeli society to buy political time, and the regional system to prove no U.S. ally is off limits. The Arab response: from condemnation to collective defense, reactions were swift and unified. Saudi Arabia: brutal aggression against a sisterly state. UAE: blatant and cowardly. Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, Iran all denounced the sovereignty violation. On September 15th, a special Arab-Islamic summit convened in Doha, shifting from rhetoric to the early architecture of an Arab NATO. The message for Gulf monarchies is personal. If Qatar, wealthy, protected, and central to U.S. posture, can be bombed, no one is safe. The U.S. dilemma: protector turned spectator. The greatest casualty of September 9th was not Hamas, nor Qatar, but U.S. credibility. For decades, Washington sold weapons and security guarantees. Yet when Israel struck Doha, those weapons and troops did nothing. Trump had only recently celebrated over $1.2 trillion in deals with Qatar and Saudi Arabia. When tested, the systems purchased failed to protect allied skies. Silence from U.S. forces felt less like protection and more like complicity. For Arab states, America's umbrella now looks perforated or subordinated to Israeli prerogatives. The Pentagon's shockwave, a gathering of generals, on September 25, 16 days after the strike, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth ordered every U.S. general and admiral worldwide to return to Quantico for a closed-door meeting. No agenda was released. Analysts cite motives ranging from warrior ethos enforcement to doctrinal adjustments. But under Doha's shadow, the symbolism is unmistakable, a purge moment. The suspicion, some commanders made themselves blind to Israel's actions by habit, pressure, or quiet acquiescence. For a politically exposed White House, this is intolerable. Quantico reads as a loyalty test and disciplinary consolidation to ensure that next time, no officer hesitates when U.S. credibility is at stake. Strategic cost-benefit, a negative return for Israel. Tactical gain, negligible. Hamas leaders survived. Strategic cost, massive. Mediation collapsed, regional goodwill lost, UN isolation even as the U.S. joined condemnation. For the U.S., immediate exposure, protector turned spectator, unproven weapons in a real test. Political cost, Trump trapped between loyalty to Israel and promises to Gulf allies. Structural consequence, Gulf states now explore an Arab NATO as a hedge against American unreliability. BBIU judgment. The Doha strike was not a show of strength, but a revelation. Israel displayed impunity, and in doing so, eroded alliances it needs. The U.S., caught silent in Doha's skies, scrambles to show it controls its military and its credibility. For the Arab world, this reactivates an older instinct. When American guarantees fail and Israeli bombs fall, the remaining option is collective defense. Netanyahu may have bought weeks of political oxygen at home, at a steep price. Regional unity against Israel weakened U.S. credibility in the early formation of a new Arab security order. Doha was not just a strike, it was the sound of an entire architecture cracking.